On a typical Tuesday morning, you wake up, check your phone, make coffee, get dressed, and head to work. Your phone was made in China, the coffee beans came from Colombia, your shirt was sewn in Bangladesh, your car was assembled in Mexico with parts from 6 different countries. And somehow, all of this just works. You don't think about it, you don't have to. But there's one industry that makes your entire modern life possible, and you've probably never given it a second thought. Container ships. These massive steel boxes floating across the ocean are arguably the most important machines in the modern world. And what makes this so fascinating is that, by all accounts, most people have absolutely no idea they even exist. Right now, as you're watching this video, there are roughly 6,000 container ships moving across the world's oceans. They're carrying everything: your iPhone, your furniture, your clothes, the parts for your car, the medicine in your cabinet, even the food in your grocery store. About 90% of everything you own or consume spent time on a container ship at some point. And yet, if you ask the average person to name a single shipping company, they'd probably draw a blank. If you ask them how global trade actually works, they'd have no clue. This industry moves $14 trillion worth of goods every single year, employs millions of people, and literally holds the global economy together. But it operates completely in the shadows. To understand why this industry is so important, you first have to understand just how revolutionary the container itself actually was. Before 1956, shipping was absolute chaos. If you wanted to send cargo overseas, workers had to manually load every single item onto the ship piece by piece. Boxes, barrels, crates, all different shapes and sizes, all loaded by hand. A single ship could take weeks to load and unload. It was slow, expensive, and inefficient. Theft was rampant because workers had direct access to everything. And labor costs were through the roof because you needed hundreds of dock workers for every ship. Then, in 1956, a trucking company owner named Malcolm McLean had a simple but radical idea. What if instead of loading individual items, you just loaded entire truck trailers onto ships? He modified an old tanker ship, loaded 58 metal containers onto it, and sailed from Newark to Houston. That single trip changed the world. Within a decade, the standardized shipping container was born. The specs were simple: 20 feet or 40 feet long, 8 feet wide, 8.5 feet tall. Every container the exact same size, stackable and compatible with trucks, trains, and ships. Suddenly, you didn't need hundreds of workers to load a ship. You needed a crane and a handful of operators. Loading time dropped from weeks to hours. Shipping costs collapsed by over 90%. And this kicked off the entire modern era of globalization, because once it became cheap to move goods across oceans, it became profitable to manufacture things anywhere and sell them everywhere. A company in Germany could design a product, manufacture it in China using parts from Taiwan and South Korea, ship it to the US, and still make a profit. The container ship didn't just make trade easier, it made the entire concept of global supply chains possible. Without container ships, there is no Apple, there is no Nike, there is no Amazon. The entire structure of the modern economy is built on the assumption that you can cheaply and reliably move millions of tons of cargo across the ocean. But here's what makes this industry truly fascinating. It's completely invisible until it breaks. In March 2021, a single container ship called the Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal. One ship, 6 days, and it nearly broke global trade. The Suez Canal is one of the most critical choke points in the world. About 12% of all global trade passes through it. When the Ever Given blocked the canal, over 400 ships got stuck waiting on either side. Every day that ship stayed stuck, it cost the global economy an estimated $9 to $10 billion. Companies ran out of inventory, factories shut down production lines, oil prices spiked. And suddenly, people who had never thought about container ships in their entire lives were glued to the news watching a stuck boat. That incident revealed something critical. The entire modern world is utterly dependent on a system most people don't understand and can't control. And the scary part? That wasn't even a worst-case scenario. That was just one ship in one canal for less than a week. Imagine if a major port shut down for a month. Imagine if a war blocked a critical shipping route. Imagine if a pandemic caused massive delays across the entire system. Oh, wait, that actually happened. During COVID-19, the container shipping industry nearly collapsed. Here's what happened. When the pandemic hit in early 2020, global trade ground to a halt. Ships sat idle, ports closed. Nobody was buying anything because everyone was stuck at home. But then, something unexpected occurred. People started buying stuff. A lot of stuff. Since they couldn't go to restaurants, bars, or travel, they spent their money on home goods, electronics, furniture, exercise equipment, all physical products that needed to be shipped. Demand exploded, but the supply chain wasn't ready. Ships were in the wrong places. Containers were stuck in the wrong ports. There weren't enough truck drivers to move goods inland. Ports were operating at reduced capacity because of COVID restrictions. And suddenly, the cost to ship a single container from China to the US went from about $2,000 to over $20,000, 10 times the normal price. Companies that relied on just-in-time inventory systems, meaning they only ordered products when they needed them, were completely screwed. Shelves went empty. Production lines stopped. And people finally started to realize that maybe this whole ignore the supply chain thing wasn't such a great idea. The container shipping industry also has some of the most extreme economics you'll ever see. This is a boom and bust industry on steroids. In 2021, shipping companies made obscene profits. Maersk, the world's largest shipping line at the time, made more money in that 1 year than they had in the previous decade combined. But by 2023, shipping rates had crashed back down, and those same companies were struggling. Why? Because shipping is a commodity business. To customers like Walmart or Nike, one container ship is the same as any other. They're just steel boxes. If another company offers to move that box for $50 less, the customer switches. There's almost zero brand loyalty, and the industry is incredibly volatile. Rates depend on global demand, fuel prices, port congestion, wars, pandemics, and whether a canal is blocked or not. You cannot plan for the future when your revenue swings wildly based on factors completely outside your control. This is why shipping companies are now desperately trying to move into logistics. Warehouses, trucking, customs brokerage, anything that's more stable and predictable than just moving containers. But there's a second problem that most people don't realize. The container shipping industry is one of the biggest polluters on the planet. A single large container ship can emit as much pollution as 50 million cars. The entire industry is responsible for about 3% of global CO2 emissions. That might not sound like much, but it's more than the entire aviation industry. And unlike cars or planes, ships burn the dirtiest fuel available, heavy fuel oil, which is basically the sludge left over after refining crude oil into gasoline. It's thick, toxic, and incredibly polluting. Governments are now forcing the industry to clean up. New regulations require ships to cut emissions by 40% by 2030 and 70% by 2040. So shipping companies are investing billions into alternative fuels like LNG, methanol, ammonia, and even hydrogen. Maersk has ordered 25 methanol-powered ships. But here's the problem. The infrastructure doesn't exist yet. You can build a green ship, but if ports don't have the facilities to refuel it, it's useless. The industry is betting billions that the world will actually build this infrastructure in time. If they're wrong, they'll have expensive ships that can't operate. And then there's the geopolitical angle. Container shipping is one of the most strategically important industries in the world, and most of it is controlled by just a handful of companies and countries. The top 10 shipping lines control about 85% of global capacity. And the shipyards that build these vessels, over 90% of them are in just 3 countries, China, South Korea, and Japan. If a major conflict broke out in Asia, it would devastate global trade. The West would have no way to quickly replace lost shipping capacity because we don't build large commercial ships anymore. There are also critical choke points that the entire system depends on. The Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, the Strait of Malacca, the Strait of Hormuz. About 60% of global maritime trade passes through these narrow waterways. If any of them got blocked, whether by accident, conflict, or sabotage, global trade would collapse. And there's not much anyone could do about it. You can't just reroute ships around Africa or South America without massive delays and costs. Now, let's talk about what happens when this system actually fails at scale. In 2024, Houthi rebels in Yemen started attacking commercial ships in the Red Sea. This forced shipping companies to reroute vessels around the southern tip of Africa instead of using the Suez Canal. That detour adds about 10 days and thousands of miles to every trip. Shipping rates spiked again, delivery times increased, and companies that rely on just-in-time delivery were once again scrambling. This is the reality of container shipping. It's the most important industry you've never heard of, and it's incredibly fragile. One blocked canal, one port strike, one cyber attack, one regional conflict, and the entire system can grind to a halt. And when it does, you'll notice. Because suddenly, the things you take for granted, your phone, your food, your medicine, won't be available, or they'll cost 3 times as much. So, what does the future look like? The industry is trying to get more efficient, more automated, and more sustainable. Ships are getting bigger, ports are getting smarter, automation is reducing the need for human workers, and alternative fuels are slowly being adopted. But the fundamental problems remain. The system is still incredibly fragile. It's still dependent on a handful of choke points, and it's still controlled by a small number of players. The container shipping industry is the invisible backbone of modern civilization. It's the reason you can buy cheap goods from across the world. It's the reason companies can operate global supply chains. It's the reason your entire lifestyle is possible. But most people will never think about it. They'll never know the names of the shipping companies. They'll never understand how the system works. They'll just assume their Amazon package will arrive on time, until one day it doesn't. And then, maybe people will finally start paying attention to the most important industry they've been ignoring. What do you think? Should we be more aware of how global shipping works, or is it fine to just ignore it until something breaks? Let us know in the comments below.